Lesson 36 is about the distributive property and minus signs and negative exponents. And our first problem asks us to use the distributive property to expand. So, with our problem here, we're going to use that distributive property to make this bigger. We're going to expand it out. So we're going to multiply our first term of x squared over y squared times x squared over y. Let's go ahead and do that. If we get x squared over y squared and we multiply it times x squared over y, we're going to figure out what the first part of our answer is. We'll come back to that. Then we're going to subtract. Well, we have to do the second part. The second part of using the distributive property is coming over to our next term. So we're going to get x squared over y squared, that was our original factor on the outside, times 3y to the third over m. Now this is in parentheses as well. Remember, this whole thing is in another set of parentheses, so we can put those on the outside. And then we can figure out what our answer is. If we go ahead and figure out what our answer is, we'll use another color. Let's use black for the answer. So this is going to be equal to, well, we've got x squared times x squared. That must be x to the fourth power over y squared times y. That must be y to the third power. We've got the first piece of our answer. We're going to subtract from that x squared times 3y to the third. That must be 3x squared y to the third. Remember, we like to put our number coefficients out in front. Then we're going to divide that by y squared m. Alright, now when we go ahead and look at this, what we want to see is if we can simplify. If we can simplify this at all, we're going to go ahead and do that. Let's put this back in parentheses first. We've got x to the fourth over y to the third. We can't simplify that. Then we've got minus 3 x squared y to the third over y squared m. Well, notice we have y to the third and we have y squared. If we say y to the third divided by y squared, that must just leave us with y to the first in the numerator. So this will cancel, and we're just left with y to the first power, because 3 minus 2 is 1. So now we have our final answer. We've got x to the fourth over y to the third minus 3x squared y over m. And we're all done with this first example. Make sure you've copied this one into your notes. Let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. We'll use red again. Okay, we want to use the distributive property to expand. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to multiply. Well, let's just multiply through the numerators first. We're going to get AB times x. So that's going to be A, B, x. Then we have A times B times A. Well, A times A must be A to the second. So we get A to the second power. And then we have B times B. That must be B to the second power. We've got our new numerator. This is all going to be divided by c squared times c, which is c to the third power. And we've got the first part of our expanded expression. We're going to add. Remember, 2bx is the same thing as 2bx over 1. So our denominator here is easy. C squared times 1. That must be c squared. We have ab times 2bx. Well, that must be a 2. Then we must have an a. We've got b times b. That's b to the second power times x. And we figured out the numerator of the second part of our expression. That was right here. Let's look at the third part now. We're going to subtract. So we have AB times 4. That must be 4AB. Then we have C squared times C squared. That must be C to the fourth power. Very good. We've fully distributed our AB over C squared into our expression within the parentheses. So we're going to close off our parentheses. Let's see if we can reduce anything. A squared b squared x over c to the third. There's nothing we can simplify. 2ab squared x over c squared. There's nothing we can simplify. And 4ab over c to the fourth. There's nothing we can simplify. We've used the distributive property to expand, and we found our answer. Let's move on to the next example. Alright, in this we have some negative exponents. And with negative exponents, or negative powers, what we're going to do is we're going to use fractions to help us eliminate those negative powers. We always want to eliminate the negative power. And the way we do that is to say, well, 4 to the negative second power over 1 is going to be exactly the same thing as 1 over 4 to the second power. What happens when we do this is when we change the sign of the power, make it the opposite sign that it was, we're going to have to move it into the denominator. Put the whole part we have to begin with into the denominator, and then we can simplify. Because 1 over 4 squared is the same as saying 1 over 16. We don't like to look at negative powers. It's confusing. Okay? So what we do is we bring it into the denominator, or we reverse its position in order to solve. Let's do that with b. So remember, this is going to be negative 4 to the negative third power. This is all over 1. So we want to get rid of the negative power. In order to get rid of the negative power, we're going to bring the whole part of our expression to the denominator. So this is going to be equal to 1 over, because we have to move it to the denominator, negative 4 to the third power. The only negative that we can switch is the negative power. So we move that into the denominator, it becomes positive. All the other negatives stay negative, because we can work with that. Now what we have 1 over, we have negative 4 to the third, negative 4 to the third. That's like saying negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 4 is 16, and 16 times negative 4, that's going to give us negative 64. So we have negative 64 as this part of our answer. Don't forget to bring along the other negative. So we've got a double negative 64. Double negative is going to give us a positive. So we have 1 over 64. 1/64. That's our final way to simplify our original problem in B. Okay, lesson practice. We'll continue this some more on page 148. Make sure you've got your notes complete, and I'll see you during our next class.